Welcome to the late January edition of CityBiz. I'm your host, Melinda Arndt. We have with us, of course, the always reliable Michael Halley, city councilman for 10 years and running, who will be filling us in on the continuing. Yes, it's winter. Yes, you don't see as many road crews out, but there are things happening, and some of them do involve streets. And we will get to that in this edition of CityBiz, which hopefully you're seeing before the Super Bowl. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here as always.
Yeah, I mentioned the Super Bowl because from the time we're filming this, it's still a week and a half. So I'm just, we're trying to keep you current with things, but the news will still be fresh if you're watching it after the Super Bowl.
Yes, it will.
So some of the things that our city council has been working on, well, we might as well mention the street projects first. There is some action regarding Merrill and Carpenter. They're up on North 4th Street, right by campus. What's going on there?
Well, some much needed reconstruction. So reconstruction is when you tear out the entire street down to the base and re-pour it. And so it's the most intensive street repair, as opposed to overlay, which is just putting a 2-inch layer of asphalt on top of a street, which prolongs its life. But reconstruction really is the most long-lasting, but also most expensive option. And so when a street gets to a certain condition, that's what we do. So there's, I'm going to get this wrong, 600 feet of, I think, Carpenter and 400 feet of Merrill going west from 4th Street will be reconstructed. And, a lot of times we do these projects with the funds that are available in order of how bad the streets are, how well traveled they are. There's kind of a criteria that goes into it. And these two fell to be able to be done in this construction season. We weren't sure if our local option sales tax funds were going to get a hit from COVID and not have enough funds to do it. So it was put on hold. But when it came back, that the revenues were not down as much as feared, we put them back on and we'll do them this spring. So they were put out for competitive bidding, and this is it's state law. And the reason that it's a good practice, even when the law doesn't require it for smaller projects, is it helps ensure we get the best possible price. So the contractors who are interested in the work put in sealed bids, so no one sees anyone else's number, and then they're opened publicly at a designated time. And so everyone, the contractors can be there if they want or not. And then all the bids are put into a spreadsheet, and the city is really beholden to go with the lowest bid as long as it's from a reputable company. So as long as the contractor doesn't have any sort of issues where they've done some work and didn't do it to a certain standard or whatever, we'll go with that bid. So we got a bid that was $80,000 below the engineer's estimate, so what we were expecting to pay. They got a good price on concrete. And so we went with that bid. We'll take that $80K and put it in contingency funds for this project and other projects. So we have a lot of street repair projects for this construction season coming up. We'll talk about more of them as they go into the bidding process, but 4th Street from basically the railroad tracks to Broadway Avenue is going to get an overlay. And then 32nd Street will get an overlay to a certain point south of Burlington. And then some other streets, D Street, I'm sorry, not D Street, 9th Street, had to think about that one. One block of 9th Street, a block of C Street, and then 23rd. So we got some good construction coming up. But what I want to mention specifically about this one over at Merrill and Carpenter is way back in 2015, the city participated in a community visioning program. And it's something that the Department of Transportation helps to fund. And they're looking for vehicular and pedestrian upgrade projects in communities. And that intersection there at Merrill and North 4th, and so it's Highway 1 as it as it goes from east-west to north-south. And there's a funny, not quite triangular shaped island for pedestrians. And the problem has been the island has a curb all the way around it. So if you're in any sort of wheeled device, so pushing a baby stroller or in a wheelchair or on a bike or anything, and you want to cross, you're going to have to go up, bump up onto the curb and bump back down. It's really not very friendly for pedestrians. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't kind of guide you through in any sort of logical way. So in addition to reconstructing the streets, we're upgrading the crosswalks. And I got an image of the intersection I'm talking about, Merrill and 4th. And it shows that there'll be curb cuts that'll allow the sidewalk and the crosswalk to go through north to south, but also connect over to the west side of 4th Street. So it'll really just upgrade and improve the safety and ease of travel for anybody not in a vehicle, but like a pedestrian or cyclist or wheelchair or pushing a stroller or any of that. And so really glad to see that a vision from 6 years ago, that sometimes it feels like these things are just put somewhere on a shelf and forgotten, but they're not. They're like a seed that's planted and then they come to fruition when the time is right. So the time was right when we were up reconstructing the streets. It's like, well, let's pull these pedestrian upgrades. And then there's another image of the crosswalk across 4th Highway 1 by Carpenter. It's been kind of messy because, again, we couldn't get a curb cut on the east side of the road because the old crosswalk runs right into a stormwater intake. So that's where the stormwater that's traveling through the gutters goes down, and you can't curb cut that. So we're moving the crosswalk. It'll go a little slightly diagonal. So we'll be south of the stormwater intake and can actually have a curb cut and a real proper pedestrian crossing there as well. So quite a bit of upgrades when you count the street reconstruction and those pedestrian crossings. So really exciting to see that one happen this construction season.
Yeah. So the action that has happened is these decisions have been made, and we know that when the weather is right, they will happen.
Yep. The contractor has been told they want it, and so they know the schedule. And sometimes we get lucky where there's a contractor in town doing other work this season, and that's when they can give us a better price. So their mobilization costs are down. They don't have to travel as far to do your project. So we've got a lot of other projects that'll be out for bid. So it'll be interesting to see what those bids look like. And if we'll see some familiar faces from the contractors. I mean, we usually have like the usual suspects, but we might get some people who are in town doing other work who want to bid on some of these other projects that we have coming up.
Great. Well, we will report on that as that comes along as well. Well, we're talking about construction projects, and we have, how about a report on the future fire station site selection? I did see a newspaper article about it. I think it's been boiled down. So what's the latest?
So at our first council meeting in January, we had the report from Klingner and Associates. They're an architectural engineering firm, and we had them assess 5 sites. And it really became clear that only 2 were viable in what we're trying to get accomplished here in terms of we're trying to enhance public safety. And so we want a fire crew that can respond faster to emergencies. So they need more space for that. We need sleeping quarters for our full-time drivers that's safe, and we need better training. So there is a benefit to these things to the public in that there's an ISO rating that insurance companies use, and they give a rating from 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the lowest, to communities, and their fire department is part of that. And so right now we're at a 4, which is pretty good, but it's possible that if we have better training and have a more up-to-date fire station, we can get to a 3. And if we get to a 3, again, I can only say these are possibilities, but there could be a benefit to everyone who pays for insurance, property insurance, potentially get a better rate. So we like that as a possibility. But so the two locations, we're still looking at the former DOT site because it's got some good space and some possibilities for some new construction and possible renovation of one or the two buildings that are there. So there's an east building and then there's a west building. And it's unclear at this point because the scope of work for what we paid for did not include a real assessment of those buildings. We really need to know more about their structural integrity and would they meet code if they could be renovated, or if neither would really make sense to renovate. So there's still some questions need to be answered. So we're looking at a further study. And then the other site we're still keeping as a possibility for now is the existing fire station site. So currently that building is shared between the fire department and the county, Jefferson County Public Health. So Public Health uses the north side of the building, which is the previous jail. They've renovated it. Like I was saying, it doesn't look anything like a jail anymore. They really made it look nice, and it's worked for them for a number of years. So some city officials went to the public or the county supervisors meeting earlier this week and just put it out there that if it came down to that location being the one that the city would want to expand on, would the county be agreeable to potentially moving their public health department to another facility? And so Chris Essel, public health administrator, just said, well, just not right now, at least, because, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but keep us in the loop. And, of course, it's possible. Now, this project isn't happening this year or next. It's got to be planned. It's got to be designed. It's got to be funded and all that. So it's not anything immediate, but it's good to start that conversation sooner and make sure everybody who's impacted understands why we're doing it, what the public need is, what the public benefit is, and what the two possible locations could be. We hope to really narrow it down to one soon so that, it can really get kind of designed and the scope of work can be determined, and then you can start pricing it. And then, there's a lot that needs to be done. But I'd say half the council didn't want to take the existing site off the list of possibilities quite yet until we had that conversation with the county and see if we could utilize the entire property. And since that's kind of a soft yes, possibly, a little more engineering needs to be done. So you have the existing building, and then you've got two buildings on the DOT site down the street that all need some sort of structural analysis. So that's probably the next step.
Well, as you say, these things take time, but all these steps are necessary. And so it's good to know, what we can look forward to, or at least what we can look forward to hearing about,
Yep.
And then people, if anyone has any input, how to reach the city council and the city council members.
Yeah, and at some point there'll probably be a public task force similar to what we did for the pool and gym project, where you get a bunch of citizens together to gather input and to explore possibilities. And it's just nice to have as much input as possible before a capital improvement project that is going to cost, millions at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of one of the other items that we wanted to talk about, also related to public services, the emergency dispatch renegotiation.
So what this is that the city and the county have a lot of agreements of sharing facilities and sharing costs in a number of ways. So one of those is that the Jefferson County Law Enforcement Center is owned by the county, and the city leases about a third of the building for our police department. And we have a lot of shared costs, and some of those are to realize cost savings. So instead of the police department having its own dispatch. So when people call 911 or call the office, they get the police specifically versus the county sheriff's office. There's one dispatch, and it just makes sense for it to be one. So part of this agreement with the county was, how do we share the costs of that dispatch that's for both services? And at some point many years ago, the agreement was that the city would pay 100% of the salary of the dispatch employees, and the county would pay for equipment. And perhaps at that time that seemed equitable, that would be a fair split. But what the reality is the city has paid the vast majority of the expense for dispatch over the years. And I'm sure somebody can probably look it up and find, but it's not in any way equitable in terms of the fact that the city's population is approximately 60% of the total county population, but we're paying a lot more than 60% of dispatch. So when I say we, I mean city taxpayers. So it's just a negotiation to make a more equitable division of those expenses, so that the other small towns in the county and the unincorporated county area are paying their share of a service that's available for everyone. And it's we can actually trace calls and show that about 40% of the calls into dispatch are for people outside of city limits. So it's, like I said, it's just a matter of making it more equitable so that people are paying their share. If I were in the county, I guess I'd be pretty happy that I'm not paying as much for a service that I enjoy as someone else. But in a sense, we've got to get back down to what's fair and make sure everyone's just paying an equal portion. So the initial concept was that the mayors of all the towns in the county could vote to put in a 911 emergency levy that would be taxed, and then they would pay towards the dispatch. That's still on the table, but there's other ways it can be done. It wasn't voted no, it was just tabled at this meeting of the mayors. But we just need to really clarify it in terms of what's the best and most equitable way to get this funded, so that city taxpayers aren't paying an inappropriate high portion of it.
Okay, well, maybe by next month or a month after that, we'll have a little more progress on this and that we can report.
Yep, hopefully. And then the last thing is, you go ahead.
Well, I think we have a map here. We talked about little free pantries last time, and I wasn't sure where all of them are. I've seen a few just in my goings about town, but it's nice to have a map of the locations that you can share with others who may like to either donate something or who may need to take some things.
Exactly. Yep. So thank you to the Little Free Pantries organizers for making this really nice map. And you can find it on their Facebook page, Fairfield Little Free Pantries. And then I don't think they have a website, but or you just take a screenshot of this one that we're showing here. But yeah, it's a perfect thing to share because, exactly as you said, it's great for the people who have the extra to give to know where the locations are, and then the people who need something to know where they are as well. So I just want to say I love that it's just being done. It's so beautiful.
Yes, me too.
It warms my heart. So thank you to everyone involved. It's just people taking care of each other it's just what it's all about.
Makes the world go around. Yep. Makes Fairfield a better place.
Yep.
Well, thanks for joining us here at the end of January. We'll see how much snow on the ground, if any, we have when we catch up with you next time at the end of February on CityBiz. I'm your host, Melinda Arndt, signing off.
See you next time.
Ciao.